that this is so key for us to understand when we're building our relationships. If it's who this person is, and now you got to decide whether, you know what, I don't really like people who are that way in my inner circle, or is it just where they are? And sure, they can still be in your inner circle because it's not who they are. It's just where they are right now. And as a great friend, it's your time to give 90% because they can only give 10%. It's not the whole 50-50. Somebody's going to need you at some point to be 80%. And as a good friend, you may have to be the one that's inconvenienced in the relationship because it's worth it. It's who they are. Who they are is a special person. Who they are is someone who loves deeply. Who they are is someone who's shown that they are a great friend to you too. But right now they can only give 10%. They're worn out, right? They're stressed out. They're dealing with some stuff they haven't even told you yet. And so that's what I mean. It's just like, I just don't want to see people, as you put it, not have any grace for the people who deserve to be in your inner circle.
If you're a go-getter, faith-driven, and family-focused, and need to break through to your next level, this is the podcast for you. Your self-talk can reshape every area of your life. It's time to dream and think big. Welcome to the Self-Talk Experience with Darnell and Tracy Self. It's time to elevate, baby. Let's get into the show.
Family, welcome to the Self-Talk Experience. Is it Thursday? What day are we watching this podcast? What do you think, babe?
It's got to be Thursday. Every Thursday, we are right here.
We are here
with the Self-Talk Experience because we know the things we say to ourselves about ourselves eventually determines what and even who we attract for ourselves.
Absolutely.
And here we are with another episode helping us to shape the things that we're courageous enough to say to ourselves.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it takes courage to say something to yourself that you don't see currently.
You have to have the confidence to just put it out there in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Almost like affirmation, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's what you like to see. But sometimes if you don't see, you're like, I'm so broke.
Right.
Like, I can't believe I'm so this. And that's not good self-talk, but it's because it's what you see right now. And it takes courage to say, my money is on its way. My business, my thriving business is coming together.
But it's not easy to be in a place where you're not happy, or where you're not content, where you're not comfortable, and to pull that out.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why today we're going to talk about,
yes,
is it who you are or is it where you are? That's the deep one right there, right? Because you got to ask yourself, is it like where that person is right now in their life, or is that just who they are? It really doesn't matter where they are. Because sometimes people fall in love with the potential
right
of someone, and that person is who they are if they're never willing to change.
Right, because you can change.
You can. But sometimes it's who someone is, and this is what people say. They say things like, you know what this was when you met me.
Horrible.
You know who I am.
Yeah.
And what that's saying is, I'm always going to be this person. Otherwise, they would say, well, listen, I was this person, but give me a chance to grow. I know when we met, I was this person.
Right. And sometimes if that's not evident, you don't know if you should be giving someone grace during a period of time, or if it's a waste of time, because this is where they are and they are not budging, and they're not in a space where they want to be different.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's easy. Like you said, they'll say, hey, I know I'm not where I want to be, but I'm working on this. I'm reading this. I want to grow to be this. Then you're like, oh, okay, great. Well, this is what they're working towards. I'm gonna work with the friendship or the relationship and see where it goes, and give them grace in going through, because you want grace when you go through, right?
Right.
But then at some point you have to look and say, I don't know. You've been dealing with the same thing the exact same way for the last 10 years. So I don't know if this is where you are, or if just this is just the person who you are. And then you have to choose, is this somewhere where I want to be?
Right.
Is this a person that I want in my circle?
Right.
And we talk about the circle. We've been talking about this, how you have the center of your circle and who's there, and there are layers to your circle. And sometimes people have to be pushed back to different layers until and that's where you're giving them a grace, right? Because you're moving them back,
Right.
moving them back. And then sometimes when you see the difference, you're like, okay, well now
They earn their way
they
back
can come
closer.
back to this space with me. Now they can come even closer.
Right.
And sometimes people stay back there.
Yeah. Well, and this is why this is so critical, right? Because you have to guard your space. It's your space. We get to choose who's going to be in our space.
Yeah.
In most cases.
Yeah.
Right. In most cases.
Sometimes you don't have any control over that. That's true.
Right. Yeah. And so if you're younger and you're in a class with someone, and as long as you're going to take that class and that person's in that class, you're going to have to deal with them for that semester. So that's different. There's your family member or you're married to that person. That's different.
Right.
Right. So you have to kind of work through those things by having to watch the self-talk experience so that they learn how to become better. And, in all seriousness, we do have to ask ourselves that question about ourselves and other people. Is this who I am? Or is this because of where I am?
Right.
Is that who they are? Are they a narcissist because that's who they are? Or is this personality coming out right now
because of their circumstances?
Because of their circumstances.
Yes.
Right? They always play victim, even when they're not the victim. Right? So that people feel sorry for them? Or is it to be manipulative? Or were they truly the victim?
Right.
And some people, because this is who they are, they're never going to play victim. Even if they are the victim, they're going to be like, no, it's okay. I'm not a victim.
Yeah.
Like no matter what, I choose to be the victor. I choose that this is setting me up for a win. I choose that this is just a setback because it's a setup. So they're never going to say I'm victim no matter what. But again, we have to ask ourselves that. And the reason why this is so important is because when we identify this, we can work through this.
Right.
Right. So number one, it's like we have to identify, like, is this person, or is it because of the situation? I know, I'll just speak to myself. Let me not talk about anybody else. I know that when we were in a tough situation financially, I had more stress on me than when we were in a place where we weren't worried about money the same.
Right.
And because of that stress, things came out sometimes as short and curt and perhaps even insensitive. And it's where I was, and I knew it. And you helped me to see it. You were like, hey, you need to, relax.
But that comes with permission.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're in a place and everyone around you sees it, but you don't. And it takes someone who has permission to say, hey, are you okay? This is what I'm seeing right now. And to be able to receive that and work on yourself with it, right?
Yeah.
And it's easy to find it in other people.
Right.
It's easy to say, oh, well, this person is acting like that. Let me give them grace because I'm not sure if that's who they are. But what about when it's you?
Right.
What about when you have to look at yourself and say, I feel like everyone around me is acting a certain way.
Right.
Can't be everyone around me. Maybe it's me.
Right.
And so that's hard too, to look at what's my self-talk right now? What am I saying about myself to myself that's exuding something that's not people don't want to receive?
Right. Yeah. And this is so good because you said so much just now. One, permission. Now, this is huge, to put yourself around people willing to call you out in a nice way, so much so that you're not defensive and offended by what they said, but thankful for what they said because they want what's best for you. If someone's saying it because they want what's worse for you, then that's different. But if you got yourself around, if you're around people who always want what's best for you, then when they share things like, hey, can I offer this feedback? It should be immediately that I know this person wants what's best for me, so I'm open to hearing it, even if it's hard to hear. It should be
immediately, but let's go back to, is it who you are or where you are? Because that's how you receive it. Because no matter what it is, even if you have permission, if it's where I am right now, even if you have permission, it's still going to piss me off. I'm still not going to receive it. It still may trigger me, right? Because that's where I am right now. So then that's when you still have the permission, but you give the person grace to say, okay, today wasn't the day to tell them. Maybe perhaps I'll call them and check on them next week.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can see, wow, they're they're really going through.
Right.
So sometimes it works when you have permission. Because we talk about all the time, if you have permission, you can tell the person and they'll receive it and everything's going to be roses. Even when you have permission, sometimes it's not the time.
Yeah.
Or the place or what they're feeling that day.
Well, what stops you from saying, you know what, I'm never going to say that again, right? Because sometimes people don't receive it, and you're thinking this is maybe who they are, so I'm just not going to say anything anymore.
Is there? I don't know. There's a time limit. Sometimes you have to just use your discernment, because if you love someone, you have to give them that space.
Right.
And sometimes you can be in a bad place for 2 weeks, and sometimes you can be in a bad place for a year.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So because I love my cousin this much, do I say, well, it's been 6 months and they're still acting crazy, so never mind?
Right.
Or do you still use your discernment in that grace?
Right.
Because like you said, you could, if it's been 2 years, 3 years, you're like, okay, this is who they are.
Right.
And when they're willing to change, we'll put them back where they were in the circle.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's great to look at. It's a great visual, right? If you're looking at a target, in the middle is a bullseye, and then there are rings that lead out to the outer ring, the last one. And sometimes it's good to have people earn their way into that inner circle. I know sometimes you just hit it off with people. Right? And they're immediately in the inner circle. And sometimes that's not a good thing, because the person you met day one may have been a representative of the true person. Right? Which wasn't really representing who they were, just maybe where you met them and they were interested in getting in that inner circle.
Yeah. And you have to give people a chance to earn their way back. It's hard sometimes when you're hurt and you take them out the inner circle, you move them back a couple of notches to leave them there permanently. You have to give people a chance to change. You have to give people a chance to grow and come back. And it's hard to not just write people off because you've been hurt.
Yeah.
So just get into a place where you consciously are open.
Yeah.
Constantly open and looking for the best.
Right.
But that's not easy.
Yeah, it's not. And it depends on what it is, right? Because we're talking about if it's who that person is or where that person is.
Yeah.
And we've talked about in one of our episodes, forgiveness, and, hurt people. Right. But then there's some people who we forgive, right? Because you forgive everybody. I shouldn't say some people. You forgive everybody. But there's certain people you cannot allow back in inner circle. Would you agree with that? Because I know you said sometimes you got to give some people, and maybe it's just some people, an ability and the grace to earn their way back. But it feels like to me, you probably saw the meme that said, forgetting what some people have done is like giving the person the gun back who shot at you but missed and said, I just reloaded it for you. So that's tough, right? Because if it's still who that person is.
Right.
So I think you're absolutely right. It's the grace and the season. But if you have determined that that's who this person is and they have still not proven that they're anyone different, I don't know. What does your self-talk say at that point? Again,
I go back to using your discernment. Yeah. I mean, and how important is that relationship to you? Are you willing to put in the work to see if there's going to be a change?
Yeah.
And I think you spoke to it too. It also depends on how damaging was whatever happened between the situation. There are a lot of things that are easy to come back from. And we can talk about this too. Sometimes you just need time. Sometimes you just need space, right? Sometimes time can be your friend and you can come back and say, okay, I've had some time to think this through. I'm a better person. You're a better person. Let's see if this works, right? And sometimes time will reveal, I'm good. I don't need that at all.
Right.
And I'm not interested in even revisiting it.
Right.
So sometimes somebody can come back and you're like, yeah, I'm done.
Right.
Right.
Isn't that funny how there's two sayings about that, right? One says, out of sight, out of mind.
But so the other one, absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Right. So it's like, so in one situation, you're like, hey, look, I just need some time out of sight, out of mind. I'm not even gonna focus on that right now. I'm gonna focus on this in my life. I'm gonna focus on me in my life. I'm gonna learn how to love me in my life. And then the other side, it's like absence makes the heart grow fonder. And so let's give me some time to learn how to operate in this relationship where it's gonna be more healthy for both of us.
Right. And a lot of times too, babe, you'll have a relationship and for whatever reason, things fall apart. I'm learning not to try to get back what I had, but to try to come back and have something stronger and have something better. Because, it's you say all the time, I just hope we can get back to how we used to be. We used to be so close. We used to do this. But obviously, if you're not anymore, that wasn't working, right? So let's get back, but let's grow better and get something even better. So now when we look back and say, man, I thought we were close in the beginning, but this is even better than ever.
That's good.
Whether it's a marriage, whatever it is, in relationships, right?
Yeah. No, that's really good. That's really good to think about. Because I think if I'm thinking about myself and I'm thinking about, is it who I am? I know what my habits are.
Right.
Right. Whether you show up on time, you show up early, or you show up late.
We were just talking about that earlier today.
Like, that about yourself. When you walk into a room, if you're the type of person that talks to everybody, you wait for someone to say hi to you. Right. Like, they didn't even say hi to me, but did you say hi to them? Like, if you're that person that everybody's like, oh yeah, I can tell you about Tracy. When she comes in the room, like, what is everybody saying about you? And you said this, it's just like if one person says it, maybe it's just that person and where they were. But if you got everybody who says it, you actually might need to pay attention and say, hey, I actually like being that person. So I'm good with everybody saying that. Or I really don't like that I'm that person. Right. And I know it's a thin line there because, we often say things like, don't worry about what everybody else says. It's about you. But if your attempt is to become better and to become a better version of you, what better way to do that than being around people who want to see you as the best version of you to help give you feedback on things. And we do this all the time. We go out to dinner, and if we're going out with other couples, etc., and you're like, oh my gosh, we had such a great time. And you would say, hey, just, I kicked you under the table. I said this because,
I know.
When that person was talking, you cut them off. And I was like, oh my gosh. Or I say it to you. I'm like, hey, babe, they were talking about their kids. You quickly talked about our kids, but didn't give them a chance to finish about their kids. You were like, oh my God. So we help each other get better in our friendships with other people by sharing feedback on how we thought one another could have been better. And I have to be open to that. And that, like, well, then how come you ain't just say, because I could easily say, well, if that should have been said, you should have said it. If I'm so wrong, next time I'm just gonna be quiet at dinner.
Again, it depends on where I am that day. I might receive it, might not.
I think 99% of the time you receive it.
Yes.
And you know why? That's who you are. You have become so open to feedback and to advice, and it may hurt your feelings.
Yeah.
You may be disappointed because you feel like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be that person. Hope I didn't say anything that makes them feel a certain way. And I think it's because you care so much about others. You don't want to be perceived in a way that you don't care when you know you do.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, thank you for saying that. And I also think that because I am more open to receiving it, I think that I'm more open to voicing how I feel too. When we were on a walk yesterday, when we were walking and you said something, and I said, next time, can you say it this way and not say it that way? Because this is how it makes me feel. But I think I'm more open to sharing because you're more open to telling me, well, this is why I said it this way. So we have these conversations, but I think it's helping me grow out to be more outspoken, I think, about how I feel.
Good. No, that's important. It's important. And again, I don't know if people would be willing to do that or even have the courage to do it if they feel like every time they do it, someone's putting a thumb on them or stifling them or making them feel like they're not worthy, have no value, their voice doesn't matter. And so that's why it's important to put the right people around you.
Yeah, I was going to say, but so who are you talking to? right?
Yeah.
Because if
Who
you're
in your relationship with.
because if you're talking to someone who's making you feel that way, then that's somebody you shouldn't be talking to anymore.
Right.
That you got to move them back.
Ooh. Okay. All right. I mean, hey, look, don't cause all these folks here to, break off friendships, break off relationships. Self-talk experience audience, T-Self said it.
No, and I'm not saying break it off. I'm saying let's work on it. Let's figure it out.
Self-talk.
Let's move back to move forward.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. And so last thing I wanted to share, and then whatever else you want to share on this topic, because I just think that this is so key for us to understand when we're building our relationships, if it's who this person is. And now you got to decide whether, you know what, I don't really like people who are that way in my inner circle, or is it just where they are? And sure, they can still be in your inner circle because it's not who they are. It's just where they are right now. And as a great friend, it's your time to give 90% because they can only give 10%. It's not the whole 50-50. Somebody's going to need you at some point to be 80%. And as a good friend, you may have to be the one that's inconvenienced in the relationship because it's worth it. It's who they are. Who they are is a special person. Who they are is someone who loves deeply. Who they are is someone who's shown that they are a great friend to you too. But right now they can only give 10%. They're worn out, right? They're stressed out. They're dealing with some stuff they haven't even told you yet. And so that's what I mean. It's just like, I just don't want to see people, as you put it, not have any grace for the people who deserve to be in your inner circle. You've chosen that they're going to be in your inner circle for a reason, because they're trustworthy, because they're loyal, because they've proven that they're not selfish in this relationship. They have given so much, and we sometimes forget that because it was 5 years ago, 7 years ago, but they've just been in the season for 3 years, and it's a tough day. So they can't do all the stuff they used to do for you. But that doesn't mean they're not a great friend. It's where they are. It's not who they are.
But how do you not take that personally? Like you said, if it's been 2 years, 3 years, how do you not take that personally?
Because you ask the right questions. When you ask the right questions, you get the answers that allow you to make the decision on whether they should stay in that inner circle or move out. So those questions are, hey, look, I notice this is different for us right now. And I know that you've been dealing with some things you shared with me, maybe even some things you haven't shared with me. Do I need to operate at a level that provides more for you? Should I be calling you more, checking on you more? Because I'm willing to do that, but I just need to know. Like, you don't even have to call me at all. I could be the one calling you, but just tell me this is where you are. Because you could say, look, right now, the bill collectors are calling every other day. I got this happening every other day. And honestly, it's not that I don't love you, don't think about you. It's just that right now, and I'm just trying to figure life out.
Right.
And yes, it would be helpful if you just called to check on me. And yes, I would love. So at this point, you can't say to them, well, I mean, you don't call me, I'm not calling you, because then that's 50-50. But you agreed that you would give 80 and they would only give 20. Right. So unless you're willing to go against what you said, then you can take it personally.
Babe. That's good.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy to say, oh, well, they're not doing it, so why would I do it?
Right. It's easy. That's 50-50.
So
though.
easy. Yeah.
Right. And again, if it's because you already know who they are, and they've proven that over and over again, that they're willing to sacrifice their time, do things that was inconvenient for them and their family and who they are, just to be there for you, then you know who they are. It's just where they are.
So when
cause
things
them to operate differently.
change, you have to be mindful of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Just ask those questions. Yep.
That's so good.
Yeah. But remember to ask the questions. And say, it's okay. Do I need to do this? And they'll tell you. Okay. Sometimes, depending on the relationship.
Depending on the relationship. Yeah. Okay.
All right, guys. Ask the tough questions. Is it who you are? Is it where you are? And then you determine where to go from there. But you ultimately get to choose that. It's another self-talk.
Absolutely. Why are you looking at me?
Because whenever I say this has been another self-talk, and I say, remember the things we say to ourselves about ourselves will determine what and even who we attract for ourselves. She says, and remember, if you're going to look at like 70% of the episodes, it's like I close it out and I say that, and she's like, and remember, and you say something.
But it's not always like that.
I know, 70% of the time. I mean, if you like that, I can always just look at you. That's why I looked at you. I can look at you and you just close it out.
But it puts me on the spot, because what if I'm not ready to close it out?
You're right. So I'm just not going to look. And if you want to just go and say something, just say it. Just go ahead and say it. And we won't even cut.
Thank you for joining us today for the self-talk experience. And if you want to ask me a question, just text me.
See you guys.
Thank you for listening to the Self-Talk Podcast with Darnell and Tracy Self. We hope you enjoyed. Be sure to rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. And we'll see you next time. And remember, talk good to yourself.